and then one of our guys.
My name is Chris Adsit, and I'm the content coordinator for an organization called Reboot Recovery. We work with veterans and first responders and their families that are dealing with line of duty stress and trauma. And for years before that, I was with Campus Crusade for Christ, primarily in a discipling ministry, first starting off with Athletes in Action track team. I did the decathlon for a number of years, and my great claim to fame was that at the 1975 National Championships, I beat Caitlin Jenner in the decathlon. But, you know, that was a long time ago, and he did a lot better the next year when I was injured. So anyway, Disciple Makers International was a ministry we were with within Campus Crusade for a number of years. And during that time, I really developed my strong convictions about making disciples. In fact, I came to Christ as a freshman in college through the ministry of the Navigators at Colorado State University. And that really set my sail, because after becoming a Christian, my freshman year, I was discipled in sequence by 3 fellow students and the Navigator rep on campus, and really learned that, in fact, you know, there are some tremendous aids to maturing in the midst of intentional disciple making. Now, when I graduated from Colorado State University, I thought that was normal, that everybody who came to Christ was assigned disciple makers, and then you grew. But I found out that my experience was extremely rare. And so I feel like it's my calling to make that not so rare. And so I've spent the last several decades studying that out and training people in disciple making disciples, etc. But about 2005, God led my wife and I to shift over to the military ministry of Campus Crusade for Christ. And Campus Crusade, my wife's background was in trauma counseling, and they asked us to do some research into, is there a spiritual way, a biblical way of addressing trauma for our troops who are coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan. So as we dove down into that, we discovered that, in fact, the principles involved in helping somebody to heal from trauma are very similar to the principles involved in making disciples. And so we wound up melding the two, and also making sure that they were compatible with what mainline psychologists would agree with, and not put a red flag up whenever they saw what we were doing. And wound up writing the Combat Trauma Healing Manual, which is being used now for the last 10 or 12 years in military ministries around the world. But what really has hit me was the fact that the Bible has so much to say about healing and discipling that is similar. And in all cases, the importance of intentionality is stressed. And so we're going to get into this today. First thing we're going to be talking about is, what is a disciple? You know, we're going to start with the end in mind, because that's what Stephen Covey told us to do in 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. But before we do that, let's have a word of prayer and ask God to be the teacher during our time together. Father, we come before you, recognizing that you are, in fact, the great teacher. So we ask that you would fill us with your spirit, that you would control us, empower us, help us to focus in on what you want to teach us today. Pray you'd help me to share the things that you put on my heart, and you'd be with each heart and mind that is in this presentation right now, to be able to absorb the things that you want to teach them. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. Just to mention, in the chat, there is a link if you want to download the notes for this session, either during the talk or afterwards. The link is there. You can just hit it and then download that, or look at it while we're talking, if you can figure out how to do that, because I sure can't, because I'm old. But anyway, let's start off. John Wesley, one of my favorite disciple makers, he started a massive lay discipling movement back in the 1700s, and he once said this: preaching like an apostle without joining together those that are awakened and training them in the way of God is only begetting children for the murderer. Let that sink in for a minute. You produce these new babies, these spiritual babies, and then if you don't try to get them established in their walk with God. It's just like taking that baby out on the front porch and just leaving it there, because you're just begetting children for the murderer. There's so much involved in trying to help somebody to grow in their faith. It's so important. And that's what we need to be. We need to be intentional about helping these young babies to grow. But I think there's two important sets of principles that we need to go into before we launch into a ministry of making disciples. And that is, what is a disciple and what is disciple making? Some of you guys might remember John Madden. He was the coach of the Oakland Raiders NFL team, and then for years and years was a color commentator for football. And one day he was interviewing the legendary coach of the Green Bay Packers, Vince Lombardi, and he asked him, what is the primary difference between a good coach and a bad one? Lombardi's immediate answer was knowing what the end result looks like. If you don't know what the end result looks like, then you're going to have a hard time actually getting there. And so in the same way, if you want to be a good disciple maker, then it's going to be important for you also to know what the end result of discipleship looks like. So what is a disciple? Is a disciple somebody who's perfect, somebody with a black belt in Bible, somebody who is like a spiritual green beret or something like that? Is that what a disciple is? Does it designate some exalted level that we hope to aspire to someday or something like that? Well, whenever you want to find out the exact meaning of a word in the Bible, you need to do two things. Step one is to go back to the original language for a literal definition. And step two is to take a good look at how it is used in context. When you do that, step one is going to make it clear that a disciple is somebody who owns a certain attitude. And step two, if you look at it in context, you'll find that this attitude will manifest itself in certain actions. So first of all, let's look at the attitude that a disciple is supposed to have. The word disciple comes from the Greek word mathetes, which simply means a learner. But what kind of learning was Jesus talking about when he said that we should make disciples? Was he talking about book learning? Was he talking about the kind of learning that you're doing right now, where you're sitting there in front of a Zoom screen and you're passively listening? Some of you might be taking notes. Is that the kind of learning that Jesus was talking about? The kind of learning that I did in school, where I went to class, I listened to the lectures, I read the texts, I did the projects, I held as much of the information to my head as I could, and then the final would come along and I'd dump it all out onto the final and then forget all about it? Would that qualify as the kind of learning that Jesus was talking about? Well, after a thorough search of my big fat Greek lexicon and concordances and commentaries and all that, I became very certain of the fact that a mathetes is a special kind of learner. He's somebody who learns by use and practice, resulting in a changed lifestyle. His attitude is, I want to learn and apply the things that Jesus Christ teaches me. Head learning is not enough. The accumulation of knowledge is not enough. We're looking at the kind of knowledge that is taken in, practiced, experienced, and incorporated into a transformed lifestyle. You get a good idea of the kind of learning that Jesus was talking about when you go out to an athletic field and watch an athlete training for his sport. Now, while I was in college, my forte was the hurdles. That's what I was best at. In fact, as a senior, I wound up as the Western Athletic Conference champion in the 400-meter hurdles and placed fifth at the national championships. A couple of years later, I shifted to the decathlon, which, as I mentioned earlier, is a new way for a Catholic to become a Protestant, but not in track and field. That's different, all right? As a decathlete, I wound up tying the world record for the 110-meter high hurdles, which at the time was 13.8. Now, let me tell you how I got to be so good at hurdling. Well, first thing I did was I read a number of books about hurdling. Second thing I did was I watched several films about hurdling. I kind of analyzed their form and everything. And then thirdly, I actually talked to several great hurdlers and got some training tips from them. And after I did those three things, I too was a national level hurdler. Does that sound right? Sound like maybe I left a little something out there? Yeah, in fact, I actually had to go out there and jump over some hurdles. And that became a big part of my life, is jumping over hurdles. And I figured out that during the time from my high school, college, and post-college days, when I finally tied that world record, I had jumped over 1 million hurdles in that period of time. So that's the thing, is that until I actually got out there and hurdled and applied some of the knowledge that I had accumulated, I would never be a hurdler. Like it says in Philippians 4:9, Paul's talking to Timothy, says, to those that he was discipling, the things that you have learned and received and heard and seen in me, practice these things. Don't just let them stay up here as head knowledge, practice them, he says. So I hurdled so much during those years, particularly in college, that not only did it begin to pay my bills through the scholarship, began to alter my lifestyle and define who I was. It became my identity. People would see me on the college campus and say, oh, there's Chris Adsit, the hurdler. Well, the same kind of learning is what Jesus is talking about. He's not interested in just passing on information to his followers that they can just stuff into some drawer somewhere. He's looking for people who will learn from him and let that knowledge sink down into their heart and become conviction, and then work its way out through their hands and their feet and their mouths and through application, and transform their lifestyle and their actions and their reactions, by the way. So before long, it begins to define who you are. People begin to look at you and say, oh, there goes Joe Jones, the Christian. He's like a little Christ, which is one of the definitions of the word Christian, is a little Christ. It becomes impossible to hide who and what you are when you allow that process to really work into your life. And so the attitude we're looking for as we're making disciples is we're trying to see that learning attitude in those we're working with. Are they learning and applying these things? They're not just parroting it back to you. They're not just taking the books, and putting it on their shelves or filing away the talks that you give, etc. But are they actually applying what you've said? So the attitude, learning and applying. So let's look at step 2 in this process of trying to figure out what the word disciple means in context in the Bible. As we do, we're going to find out that a disciple demonstrates certain actions. Now, you may think I'm going to say certain things like, they spend 1 hour a day in Bible study and they go to church every time the doors are up. No, it's not anything like that, as you're going to find out. You've all read the 4 Gospels, right? And in the 4 Gospels, we've got lots of disciples. We've got the 12 apostles. And as you do a little study of the Gospels, probably you would be able to list a number of really good things that those disciples did. But you'd also be able to list a number of not so good things that those disciples actually took part in. Well, I took the time to examine every occurrence of the word disciple in the 4 Gospels. There's 238 of them, because I wanted to see how the word was used in context. And I came up with a very confusing picture. On the one hand, we get the idea that a disciple is some kind of a spiritual Chuck Norris or something with a Bible. You read about Jesus placing some pretty tough standards on those who call themselves his disciples. Things like taking up their cross and following him. Taking up a cross, that's a personal instrument of execution. And so he's saying, put that on your shoulder and follow after me. That's a strange admonition. Take all the criticism and persecution that he endured, talks about in Matthew 10, 24 and 25. Giving up all your possessions, Luke 14, 33. Being so much in love with him that your relationship with your family looks like hatred in comparison to your love with him. That's in Luke 14, 26. And being willing to die for him, Matthew 10, 39. But on the other hand, we see people in the scriptures who did not even come close to those standards, and yet they're clearly called disciples 238 times. Now, these men and women were more like Napoleon Dynamite with a Bible. These were people who were spiritually slow, spiritually powerless, faithless, used as puppets by Satan, full of spiritual pride, uncommitted, lacking compassion, violent, wrathful, ashamed of Jesus, opposing Jesus's plans, directing him or deserting him in his greatest hour of need. So, what is a true disciple? Is it the spiritual stud or the spiritual dud? Well, the answer is both. A disciple is both. Because you see, a disciple is not somebody who attains a certain admirable level, but a disciple is a person in process, moving towards ever deepening commitments to Christ. They're a person in process, moving towards ever deepening commitments to Christ. So the maturing process actually begins when a person first receives Christ and becomes a learner. He will continue to learn and be a disciple as long as he keeps on learning. You see, when Jesus was describing a person who first receives Christ and calls him a learner, then what he's doing there is he's actually laying out what the mature disciple is going to look like. That's our vision. That's the vision he has for us. He's painting a picture of the finished product. That's where we're headed. And we're not headed to be a spiritual Chuck Norris. We're headed to be like the Lamb of God, the one who is meek and mild, the one who is humble. But when you look at the disciples in the gospel, you're looking at the baby disciples, Nevertheless, their attitude is, we want to learn. And if you look at them in the book of Acts, they're starting to stand on their own 2 feet. They're starting to step out boldly in faith. They're starting to take on authority and responsibility. They're starting to look more and more like that picture that Jesus had painted for them in the 4 Gospels. Now you look at them again as they're writing the epistles, and guys like Paul and Timothy and Priscilla and Aquila and Apollos are coming on board. Now you're seeing the grown-up disciples, and they look pretty much like Jesus had described them. But even then, they're still in process. We're never going to finally arrive. You're never going to be able to get rid of that learning attitude. It's going to continue to profoundly affect all of our actions. So let's see. Everybody can still see me all right? Because all I can see is me. You're still out there, right? Oh, well, there's Dave anyway. Okay. I wonder did we have us on gallery view before?
Yeah, and I put the spotlight on you, but I can leave it off if you want.
Okay, the spotlight, huh? I hadn't known about that maneuver. So, yeah, however we want to do it, but anyway, so we'll proceed from there. But I was going to tell you about a guy that lives next door to us. He's got this really weird kid, and I keep telling him, look, you need to put this guy in an institution. He's too much for you. He crawls in the dirt. He's incoherent. He's disgusting when he eats. Can't dress himself. Can't control his bodily functions. I say, give it up, man. But my neighbor, he is stubborn and he is naive. He thinks that just because his son is only 4 months old, we ought to be patient. Maybe he'd grow out of this stage or something. I don't know. That's what he thinks. Well, obviously, that's supposed to be a humorous example of the fact that we don't expect a baby to act like an adult. Doesn't mean he's not a person. He's a full-fledged person, but he's a person in process. As long as he's making progress, we really don't care too much about how uncivilized he is at the moment. Same with the disciple. Starts out as a baby, a learner. Doesn't meet the criteria of a mature disciple yet, nor is he expected to. As long as he's making progress, we're not going to get nervous about how things are going. And so the state of being a disciple is an attitude that involves a growth process which will generate certain actions. We're going to get into those certain actions here in just a minute. But sometimes you are a learner. You're moving towards those ever-deepening commitments to Christ. Sometimes you're not that learner. It's your choice. You see, from time to time in this process of education, Jesus is going to increase the course load. And if a disciple wants to remain a disciple, then he must respond favorably. See a good example of this in John 6, verses 60 to 69. Jesus was increasing his demands on his disciples in terms of what they had to believe about him. He was saying things like, I am the bread of life that came down from heaven. And the bread I'm giving for the life of the world is my own flesh. You need to eat my flesh. If you eat my flesh and drink my blood, you'll have eternal life. Now, what would you think if you heard this person making these kinds of proclamations at the time? Well, it says in verse 66, as a result of this, many of his disciples withdrew and were not walking with him anymore. They said, man, this is too far out. You have stepped over the line here, Jesus. You have slipped a cog, and we don't want to learn anymore. We're out of here. And so then it says he turned to the 12, and in verse 67, he says, well, what about you? Are you going to leave me too? Or are you going to keep following? And Peter says, where else can we go? You're the one who has the words of eternal life. You see, the 12 agreed to his demands. Maybe they didn't understand them completely, but they agreed and they wanted to keep learning. They wanted to keep growing. So to the growing disciple today, those that we're working with, but also with us ourselves, he's going to say from time to time, look, you are doing well. But now it's time to graduate on to the next class. You're going to learn some amazing things, but more is going to be expected of you as well. The main thing I'm looking for in you, he says, is deeper trust, a deeper level of commitment, that your actions will line up with your attitude, that you will actually live what you have learned, that your behavior will line up with your philosophy. That's what he's looking for as we're trying to grow. And he says, are you willing to continue? Are you willing to go to the next step, the next phase? Now, if the disciple says no, then it's at that point Jesus says, well, then you cannot be my disciple. It has nothing to do with your eternal destination or how much I love you. I already love you with 100% of my love, and that'll never change. And your salvation is settled. I bought you with my blood. But as far as what I can do in you and through you, this is where we've got to stop. If you won't learn from me, how can I call you my learner? Now, at any time you want to change your mind, come back to class, we will resume your education right where we left off. But until you absorb and apply what I'm trying to teach you, by definition, you are not my disciple. You are not my learner. You see, the thing that defines a disciple is that learning attitude, but the proof of the pudding are these ever deepening commitments to Christ. So a brand new Christian is usually a disciple. You know what they're like. I mean, they just want to learn everything. They're reading the Bible right and left. They're asking questions. They're going to church all the time. They're listening to podcasts and tapes, etc. They're just hungry. They want to learn all they can learn, and they're starting to apply things, and things are starting to change. I mean, we're seeing amazing things happen. Even just this past week with a couple, and she was deeply involved in the occult. And she finally came to Christ and began to offload her occultic stuff and got rid of all the amulets, et cetera, that were in her house. And things have totally turned around for her. And the guy she's living with also came to Christ. Now they're going to get married and they're going to follow Christ. This is application. These are the ever deepening commitments to Christ that we're looking for here. So a brand new Christian usually is a disciple, but somebody who has been a Christian for 25, 30 years may not be, because somewhere along the line, he said, no, I'm not going there. I'm not doing that. This is where I get off. So as we make disciples, the attitude that we're looking for is this learning attitude. And the actions we're looking for are those ever deepening commitments to Christ. Now, you're probably all working with various people, and it may be a one-on-one situation. It may be in the context of a small group. This is one of the things that if you want to be intentional about your disciple making, you'll give some thought to. You'll see where they are in their walk to maturity. And with the help of the Holy Spirit kind of enlightening you, you're going to be able to see some next steps that they need to take. You know, what are those next steps? You know, what might some examples be? Like, for instance, here's a guy who's, you know, he likes being involved in your Bible study. He likes to read the Bible and all of that. And he likes to pray, but, you know, he just somehow, I can never find the time to go to church. You know, I don't like church much. So perhaps the next level of the next deepening commitment he needs to make is to say, okay, I'm going to go to church and I'm going to be able to benefit from all the gifts of the Spirit that are represented in this church. And so that would be one thing that you'd start working for and praying for and all of that, the ever deepening commitments to Christ. It's going to be different with every person that you are working with. Maybe somebody else, they're coming to the Bible study, but they're never prepared. They've never done the lesson ahead of time. That's their next step, that they will actually gain the conviction that I need to prepare ahead of time because it's going to benefit me so that I can grow. Ever deepening commitments to Christ. And so here's a formal definition of what a disciple would be based on what I've been saying for the last 20 minutes. And this is in the notes if you do want to download them. It's printed up there. A disciple is a person in process who is eager to learn and apply the truths that Jesus Christ teaches him, resulting in ever deepening commitments to Christ and to a Christ-like lifestyle. I'll say that one more time just so you catch it. A person in process, eager to learn and apply the truth that Jesus Christ teaches him, resulting in ever deepening commitments to Christ and to a Christ-like lifestyle. So that's what we're trying to produce. That's what we're looking for. It doesn't have a finish line, but it is a state of mind that we're trying to help those that we're working with to get to. So now let's move on to the next thing. We've talked about what is a disciple. Let's talk about what discipling is. Now, Jesus indicated how central disciple making was supposed to be when he gave us the Great Commission. These are his famous last words. These are the things he said just before he ascended to the Father. So they must be pretty important. And you all know the Great Commission, but I'll just quickly say it again. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I commanded you. And lo, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. Now, what is Jesus really telling us to do here? Well, if you happen to be an expert in Greek and English, you would have immediately recognized that the primary imperative verb, the main command of this sentence, is the Greek word mathechuo. Now, a lot of people aren't real sure what the word mathechuo might be, but when they look at that sentence, they would say, well, the primary imperative verb of that sentence is go. We got to go. Get out there and go. But in fact, that's not the primary imperative verb of that sentence. Mathechuo is translated by the two English words, make disciples. There's some other verbs in there and other words in there that look like verbs, but they're actually adverbial participles. Going, it's not actually go, it's going, or as you're going, teaching and baptizing. That's the context in which you need to be making disciples. But that's the main core of what he's trying to tell us to do, make disciples. In other words, the focus, the order of our commander-in-chief is that of making disciples. Not that we would make converts, not that we would make decisions for Christ, or conference attenders, or pew sitters, or programs, or buildings, or Bible study groups, or anything like that. None of these things are wrong by any means, that's for sure. But what he wants us to focus our attention on is the primary imperative of making disciples. That's our prime directive if you are a Star Trek fan. And if all of our religious activity doesn't dovetail into this primary objective, then we're just wasting our time and we're not doing what the Savior told us to do. We're just involved in impressive religious activities. What we're doing, is it going to produce those that are learning from Jesus and applying what he taught them and resulting in ever deepening commitments to Christ? If it is, then we're making disciples. Things are working. Now, generally speaking, how do we go about doing that? I want to start making disciples. Next week, what can I do? Or do an inventory of what I'm currently involved in. Is this considered, making disciples? Well, that's an important thing to look at, I think. I'm going to share a few activities. And if we could, I want to put it back onto the gallery view because I want to be able to see all the people that are there who have their cameras on. Can we get that back to the gallery? There's the gallery, okay. So I can't see too many, but those of you who have your cameras on, you can participate in this little exercise. And I'm going to talk about some ministry activities. And if you think this would qualify as disciple making, then I want you to just raise your hand like that, okay? And if you're a little sure, maybe it's not really, but maybe it's a little bit, just raise your hand a little bit or whatever. And if you think, no, that's not disciple making, then no, raise your hand. All right, so first of all, is this disciple making? A guy leading a weekly small group Bible study, is he making disciples? Yes or no? Yes. Somebody says, yeah, maybe. Okay. Secondly, how about a seminary professor teaching a class on hermeneutics? Disciple making or not? A lot of wiggly hands out there, I see. Okay. How about a preacher preaching from the pulpit on a Sunday morning? Is that making disciples? 2 thumbs up from Mike Moore. Okay. Yeah. Oh, now you're vacillating. Okay. Now what? How about a Sunday school teacher teaching a class on Sunday? Some people, yes, some no. Okay. How about a guy writing a book, a Christian book? Is that guy making disciples? Prevaricating. A radio preacher recording a message for broadcast. Is he making disciples? Nobody thinks so. David a little bit, Mike a little bit. How about a Christian counselor helping a Christian work out a problem? Is that disciple making? People, yeah, more there. Okay. What about what I'm doing right now in this here Zoom class? Is this disciple making? A few people saying, yeah, some people maybe. All right. So how about what you did within the last few days or weeks when a brother or a sister came to you and they had a question or a problem and you talked it out together? Would that be disciple making? Okay, quite a few agree with that idea. Okay, so let me ask you this. How many of you would say that none of these qualify as disciple making? Let's see your hands. Okay, a few people there. And how many of you would say all of them qualify as making disciples? 2 hands up from James Gleason. Hey, James, didn't see you there earlier. Good to see you. Yes, pastor of Sunrise Christian Church in Hillsboro, by the way, Mike. So, well, do you remember what a disciple is? A disciple is a learner. So disciple making means we're going to be making learners. So if I had to define disciple making, I'd put it like this. Anytime a person intentionally helps another person learn a little more about Jesus Christ, that's disciple making. We're looking for learners. So if I'm helping this person to learn, then I'm involved in disciple making. And so remember, though, that the word for the biblical term for learn is to learn and apply. So we're actually talking about transformation here. So then we could take the next logical step in our definition and put it this way. Anytime one person intentionally helps another person to become a little more like Jesus Christ. So now it's not just here, it's actually I'm becoming, I'm acting, I'm obeying like Jesus Christ. And if I'm helping somebody to be able to do that, then I am making a disciple. But see, here's the catch. While every one of those activities I just mentioned could be considered an activity that would produce disciples, some are going to produce disciples more efficiently than others. And so I think that what we've got to do as individuals is we've got to do a self-assessment and say, okay, is what I'm doing efficiently producing learners who are moving towards ever-deepening commitments to Christ? Is this the way I have been gifted? Is this the calling that God has called me to? And if your answer is yes, good, just keep doing it. But if in your self-assessment you come to a conclusion and say, you know what, maybe some adjustments need to be made because I'm not seeing a lot of fruit. I'm not seeing a lot of people coming out of this activity that want to learn and apply, and those ever-deepening commitments to Christ and a Christ-like lifestyle are not actually happening. And so if the body of Christ really wants to fulfill the Great Commission of Jesus Christ and make disciples, then I think it's going to be a good idea for us to increase our commitment towards those activities that will most efficiently make learners. And as those of you who are pastors, executive pastors, senior pastors, et cetera, as you think through the planning of the ministry of your church, I think this is the lens you've got to put everything through. Is this activity going to actually be producing learners who are moving towards those ever-deepening commitments to Christ? I'm not saying abandon those activities that I just mentioned a minute ago, but are they making a positive contribution? And so with that in mind, we looked at what is a disciple, what is disciple making. But now let's shift gears a little bit and look at what is the most efficient group context for disciple making. And I'm going to give you three options here. And again, we're going to have a hand raising deal here, old fashioned, with actual hands being raised, not electronic ones. I don't even know how that works for sure. But here's the three contexts for disciple making. Does disciple making happen best in a large group context, like a congregation, a big conference, things like that? How many of you would say, yes, that's where disciple making really goes? That's it, okay? How about the second context? And that's a small group context. This is a group of, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 people that are meeting on a consistent basis, and they're studying a certain subject related to the Bible. Small group context. How many of you say that's where disciple making seems to happen the best? Okay, a lot of thumbs up there, a lot of hands, okay. And the third context, and that's the one-to-one context. That's pretty obvious what that is. I'm working on a singular basis with this other person and helping them to grow. How many of you would say that's where disciple making needs to take place? How many of you would say so? Okay, got a pretty good mixture of all three of those there. I would say myself, my humble opinion, is that you are all right. That in fact, all three group sizes are very important. There simply isn't a best environment. Certain dynamics will meet certain needs better than the other ones. The ideal situation would be is if you can involve your disciple in all three of those group dynamics, large group, small group, and one-to-one. For instance, in the large group, it's when a disciple is in a large group context that they really gain a sense of movement and momentum. They see the big picture that's there. He sees he's not alone. There's lots of people that think just like he or she does, and that's going to give that person confidence. When you're in a big group like this, it's hard not to get a little bit excited and enthused about the fact that, hey, we are going somewhere. We're all going somewhere. He's going to gain vision and long-term commitment in the midst of a large group that is very difficult to find elsewhere. I don't know about you, but a lot of the major decisions that I made as a younger Christian were in the context of a big conference. We have these excellent speakers, and the Spirit of God is working, and the fellowship that's there, and I am just so primed to listen to the voice of God. And he taps on my shoulder and he says, "What about this, Chris?" And I'm ready to make that decision in that large group situation. And I'm still working on many of those decisions to this day, the commitments that I made back then. Then there's also that small group context. In a small group, a Bible study that's meeting on a weekly basis, or a home fellowship, or whatever it might be, they're going to gain a sense of real, true biblical camaraderie and fellowship. Going to be able to rub elbows with his or her peers, be able to learn that all these other people have the same hopes and fears and questions and difficulties that I have. And I thought I was the worst guy on the planet, but yet all these other guys are struggling with the same kinds of things I am. It's a perfect environment for this person to learn how to teach others, learn how to be taught by their peers, how to encourage others, how to be encouraged, how to hold each other accountable, how to be held accountable. All this seems to happen best in that small group context. And some of the things that occurred in the small groups I was involved in, particularly as a younger Christian, and the relationships that were forged in those days, they're still going strong today because of how deep things went in that small group context, which could not happen in the large group context. But then there's the third context, and that is the one-to-one. And you see, it's only in this context that you can actually personalize and specialize your disciple-making approach. It's in this intimate, personal environment that you can deal with the intimate, personal issues of a person's life. Now, let me make one thing perfectly clear. If your disciple doesn't have a place where they can deal with the intimate, personal issues of their life, then eventually they're going to be devoured. It's one of the most tried and true tricks of our enemy. The idea is that if he can cut one of the sheep off from the flock, get that person isolated, make sure that there are few, if any, avenues of support open to him from other Christians, prompt him to neglect his relationship with the Lord, and then turn up the heat. And as he squirms under the pressure and doesn't know where to go for help, Satan steps up and says, I'll meet your needs. I'll help you out here. If you simply do what I say, I'll take care of you. And Satan is real good at meeting people's needs. And of course, he doesn't appear as Satan. You know, Eugene Peterson talked about every temptation is a suggestion for improvement. And so Satan's going to come along and say, hey, I got some great ideas. I mean, all this Christian stuff isn't helping you any, but I got some wonderful ideas of how to improve your life. And so the person is going to listen, and they're going to take a bite, and they're going to be circling the drain soon thereafter. See, people don't bail out of the Christian life because they didn't catch the sequence of Paul's missionary journeys, or didn't learn how to share the 4 spiritual laws properly, or only made it through book 3 of a 10-book Bible study series. The reason people bail out is because no one was there to be used as an instrument of God to help that man deal with his lusts. No one was there to explain to that woman how it is a good God could allow her husband or her child to die. No one was there who would allow the guy to just let off steam and not judge him afterwards. No one was there to say, buddy, even if the whole world is against you, I'm for you, and I'm there for you no matter what. And so that's why it's so important to understand that all 3 of those dynamics are so important. If you can help those that you're working with be involved in all 3 of those dynamics, that will be just a very fruitful petri dish for them to grow in, and they will grow very strongly. So you might say, well, you know, I can really see the importance of that one-on-one environment, but frankly, that seems not very time efficient or effort efficient. You know, I'd like to figure out some way to multiply this out a little better. Well, you know, you probably, most of you have all heard about the idea of the multiplication principle involved in ministry, that, you know, there's the addition principle and there's the multiplication principle. The addition principle is we're just going to keep adding people to our numbers. And as time goes on, you know, we'll reach the world for Christ. The only problem with that is that, well, let's say, you know, we got a church that could bring 1,000 people to Christ let's say 10,000 people to Christ every single year. That's a pretty good church right there. Well, the thing of it is, even if they could do that, and in fact, if we had 10,000 of these churches doing that all around the world, it would still take us over 600 years to reach the 7.7 billion people on our planet today. And we actually never would get there because the population growth of this planet is such that we're adding 140 million people every year, and those who are converting to Christianity is far less than that. So we never even reach the finish line. But by multiplying, you know, if I would just pour my life into one person for 1 year, and during that year, teach them how to be involved in a Christian community, how to study the Bible, how to pray, how to be involved in ministry, and all the, you know, how to apply the Bible in their life, etc. Just take that 1 year and get them firmly established, and also during that year, teach them about passing it on to others. At the end of a year, there'd be 2 of us. And then we do that again with 2 others. By the end of 2 years, there's 4 of us. By the end of 3 years, there's 8 of us. By the end of 4 years, there's 16 of us. And then, man, by 5 years, we got 32 people. That's pretty impressive, isn't it? Not, people look at that and say, 5 years of work and only 32 people? You know, we need to get that guy out there that's these churches that are winning 10,000 people to Christ every year. Well, the thing of it is, though, is if we keep that process going, that actually by the 34th year of the process, we've reached our goal of way more than 7.7 billion people coming to Christ. And so we need to understand, you know, it's kind of like what Solomon said in Ecclesiastes 7:8. The end of a matter is better than its beginning, and patience is better than pride. And so, you know, things are going to be small in the beginning, any kind of a multiplication ministry, but man, after a while, it starts to take off. And that's what we want to apply, because that's where the strength is. Not only that, you know, obviously, if the chain breaks at one link, you know, you don't reach your goal. But this should show you the incredible power of a ministry that incorporates multiplication rather than just addition. Not only that, but there are very, very few churches that can win 1,000 or 10,000 people to Christ every year. But every single person on this Zoom call can do the multiplication idea, pouring your life into one person for 1 year. And furthermore, what are we producing with that first strategy? We don't know. We don't care. We're just probably producing more children for the murderer. These little babies, we crank them out and then let them go because we got to go make some more babies. That's not the way that I think we need to operate. But in the second one, we know what we're producing because we are sticking with them. We're making sure that they get established and that they grow and that they can walk with God long term. And this can become very significant in the long term as well. I want to talk about an interesting chain of multiplication, and then we'll open it up to some questions for the rest of our time together. But this chain of multiplication started way back when, the early 1800s, a guy by the name of Edward Kimball. Edward Kimball was a layman, and he just had a passion for ministry. Now, he didn't go to seminary, was not formally trained, but he was an adult Sunday school teacher back east on the East Coast. And he began to get to know a young shoe salesman by the name of D.L. Moody, and led D.L. Moody to Christ and got him involved in his Sunday school and poured into his life for a number of months. And as you know, Dwight L. Moody became one of the greatest evangelists of our time. Well, Moody went off to England, spent a great deal of time building into the life of a guy named F.B. Meyer, who became one of the world's great theologians. Now, Meyer greatly influenced the ministry of a fellow by the name of J. Wilbur Chapman, who also became a great educator and a theologian. And if you go to seminary, you're probably going to read some of the things that were written by Meyer and by Chapman. Now, Chapman also had a commitment to disciple making, and he wound up discipling a young American professional baseball player named Billy Sunday, who is as popular as Mike Trout or Mookie Betts of the Dodgers these days. I mean, this was a high-level guy, but Billy Sunday became this incredible evangelist. And he always had a group of 12 young men with him that he discipled. One of these young men was a Jewish convert by the name of Mordecai Ham. And he followed in Billy Sunday's footsteps, also became a great evangelist and also a great disciple maker. One day, Mordecai Ham went down to North Carolina, wanted to conduct a revival down there, and a young man showed up at that revival by the name of Billy Graham and came to know Jesus Christ as his Savior. And as you know, Billy Graham had a rather profound influence on the world for Christ. But this chain doesn't stop there. Back in 1957, a widowed woman attended a Billy Graham crusade in New York City, and she gave her life to Christ. A few years later, she shared the gospel with her nephew, who was growing up without a mother, son of an abusive father. He was actually contemplating suicide during his young years there, but after his aunt shared Christ with him, he also became a Christian. Well, this young man by the name of Dick Kreider moved out to Colorado in the late 1960s to attend Colorado State University, where he met me and led me to Christ and discipled me for the first year and a half of my time with Jesus. And so you look at this and you trace back that chain of multiplication to the early 1800s, to this guy, Edward Kimball, who was a guy who just simply said, I'm here, God. I want to be used by you. How can I build the life of Jesus Christ into another individual? All I am is a Sunday school teacher, but I'm available. And look at the chain of events that were generated from that commitment, from that one man. I think that can happen with every single person who is here. And those of you who are pastors, there are many people within your church that could also have that kind of an influence on the people around them in their lives. They don't have to have that formal training, although that is helpful and useful. As long as they're walking with Christ and they understand the principles of making disciples, that's the profound effect that any one of them and any one of you could have as well. So there are obviously a number of other things that we might want to talk about. We don't have time to do that today. Elements of disciple making that need to be involved if you want to really see a productive ministry. Things like understanding that there are three entities that make disciple making happen. It's the Holy Spirit, the local church, and you, the disciple maker. All three of those elements need to be involved. It's the Holy Spirit that's going to accomplish the transformation. It's the local church, the local body of believers that's going to provide the context for that. And it's you being intentional about helping people to grow. It's going to make a big difference in people's lives. It's very important for you to play your role and not try to play the role of the other people that are involved in there. Also, it'd be important to understand the difference between single relational disciple making and general contractor disciple making. Why one is good and one is not. Single relational is, I'm the only person that this guy is going to have contact with, and I will tell him everything I know. Well, that's, I will be passing on my strength, but I'll also be passing on my weaknesses. So we don't want to do that. We want to take advantage of the body of Christ and be a general contractor and be able to steer this disciple around to various people who have gifts that I don't have, who can do a better job of pouring into this person's life than I could. We ought to look also at the three pillars of successful disciple making, which are prayer, relationship, and content. We want to pray for our disciple because we want to connect with the one who can actually perform the transformations that have to happen. We want to deepen that relationship so that they trust us and want to listen to what we have to say. And the content is so important. What are we passing on to them? And what are the things that they need to learn and apply? Very important. And then finally, in our relationships with our disciples, the necessity to balance, on the one side, love and encouragement, and on the other side, accountability and discipline. You look back in your life and you find somebody who has been extremely influential in your life, you will find that that person was able to figure out that balance. They expressed their love and encouragement to you, but they also provided that accountability and discipline that you needed in order to move on from where you were when they first started with you. So obviously, these aren't simple elements. We could go into great depth regarding each one of them. And I'm not trying to be a merchandise hawker here, but if you want to go into depth, you could get a hold of my book, Personal Disciple Making, which has been around for a number of years, still used in a lot of Bible colleges. And this is for somebody who wants to be a disciple maker. It's a lot of the principles I talked about today are contained in here. But then a second book, which is a spinoff of that one, is called Connecting with God. And this is a book for the disciple. So you learn how to be a disciple maker. This is some content that you can use that parallels what's in personal disciple making to help you to help that person to grow. So I want to now just take our remaining minutes for any questions that might be there. We need to finish, when is it, 2:45?
Yeah, there's a couple of things in the chat that I'll make mention of while you guys are thinking of your questions. James Gleason, pastor at Sunrise Church, put in the link to your book there, Chris, in the chat, the first one, your personal disciple making. So he gave a good endorsement for that. Really appreciates that.
Thanks, James.
He also mentioned he's got a link there to a 4-part seminar that you did at their church. So if anyone wants to see that, the link is also there. Janet Wyndham in the chat asked a question. Oh, and before I mention her question, I also put in a link. I forgot to say what it was. That last link that's in the chat is a link to a survey. If you want to fill that out after we're done here, be sure and get the link before we're done so that you get the link. That just gives us an opportunity. You can give your name, your email address. What did you appreciate about the workshop, suggestions, any questions, or if you want to connect with Chris later on, you can do that as well. So Janet's question in the chat here was, what are some ways to approach people to be discipled? So what do you think there, Chris?
Good question. There are several ways you can do it. One of them is what I call the fellowship group feed approach, where just in the course of your regular ministry, maybe you lead Bible studies, and there is a group of 8 or 10 people in your Bible study, and you go through this Bible study, but God begins to point out a certain individual in that group that really seems eager to learn. They really want to grow, and so as you see that faithfulness there, here's somebody who is eager to make those ever-deepening commitments to Christ. You approach them personally and say, I really sense that you have a desire to grow. And one of the things I'm really giving myself to is to try to help people to grow. What would you think about us meeting together on a regular basis to actually grow? Other ways to do it is you want to begin praying and saying, okay, God, I'm available. I'm here. I want to be able to put as much as I can, my time and energy into an individual or a few individuals, bring somebody along. And then keep your eyes open, because I'll tell you, God is looking for people who are willing to take that commitment on. And that person may just walk right up to you and say, hey, I want you to disciple me. And that's happened to me a few times. Or it may just be one of these deals where you just become closer and closer, and it becomes a natural thing to say, hey, let's start getting together and study the Bible. Well, I don't know how to study the Bible. Well, how about if I show you how to do it? And so those are some great ways to do it. Also, especially for guys, being involved in some kind of a project, physical, involving some kind of physical activity. Maybe it's a motorcycle club, maybe it's doing some missions around town, helping clean things up, build things, whatever it might be, and developing relationships in that context. And as you begin to talk about things, look for ways of turning the conversation over to Christ. One other thing is the whole idea of service. You make yourself available like Jesus did. Even the Son of Man came not to be ministered unto, but to minister and to give his life a ransom for many. And so you have a lifestyle of ministry. And as you are meeting the needs of other people around you, as they come to you with a need and you say, hey, I'll be glad to help, I'm here to help. In the context of meeting that physical need, very often God will help that person to see you as a need meter, and they begin sharing other things with you, and you'll be able to inject some spiritual context into it. And that's when you begin discipling somebody. Discipling can be either overt or covert. You can disciple somebody without them even knowing it. But then there may come a time somewhere along the line where it becomes very obvious. Yeah, you're the mentor. You're the mentee. I'm the mentor. Let's define it. And you might not even have to define it. Just keep doing it. There's a few ideas there.
We got another question that came up in the chat here, Chris, from Brush Prairie Church. Is there a difference between mentoring and discipleship? What would you say is the difference, if you think there is a difference?
Yeah, it's kind of fuzzy, the difference between them. A lot of times it's just a matter of semantics. I think there are probably some people who would place a different definition on the two of them. Mentoring, you can mentor somebody to do anything, doesn't necessarily have to be spiritual. A big component of mentoring is modeling. In other words, we're going to do this together. I'm going to show you how I do it, and so now you do it. And on the other hand, with disciple making, same thing. You're going to want to modeling is a very important component of disciple making as well. And obviously, we want to try to put it in the context of biblical truth. So I myself don't make a very strong distinction between the two.
Do feel free to unmute yourself and ask questions too, or you can type them in the chat. We're nearing the end of our time, but I think Chris can stay on for a little bit more still. So Mike Moore says, mentoring is making a replica of self, and disciple making is making a replica of Jesus.
Okay, I like that. Yeah, a lot of times people say, yeah, I'm going to be doing something with my disciple today. And my correction is, no, he's not your disciple. That's a disciple of Jesus Christ. Whenever we start thinking that I have a disciple, we're going to get in trouble. So yeah. Good word, Mike.
What other questions do you guys have?
I got a question for you. Yeah, I would like to throw this out and see what kind of response there might be. Can you say that the term Christian and disciple are interchangeable? If a person is a Christian, are they a disciple? What are some of your thoughts on that?
That's for anyone.
Yeah. Anybody who is stout of heart.
It depends on if they the attitude of learn. What?
Say it again, Jennifer.
It depends on if they have the attitude of being a learner.
Well, yeah. And if they don't have an attitude of being a learner, you could say they're not a disciple, but would you say they're not a Christian?
No, they can be a Christian, but not a disciple.
Okay. Thanks, Jennifer. Other ideas?
I'm not sure about that. This is Janet.
Mhm.
I'm having a bad hair day. That's why you don't see my picture.
Me too.
Anyway, I really think that it depends on the person's definition of a Christian. The Bible's definition and who a Christian really is someone that follows Christ and continually works on who they are and how they can become more and more like Christ, which is a disciple. But a lot of people say that they're Christians and their pews are full of them, but they're not. There is no fruit.
Yeah, it comes down to anybody can call themselves a Christian,
Right.
but are they? I remember back in my athletic days, there was a shot putter by the name of Al Feuerbach, and Feuerbach was a great name for him. He was a furious guy. He was just crazy shot putter guy. And one day we were talking about things, and he asked me what I did. And I said, well, I'm part of a Christian track team, part of Athletes in Action, part of Campus Crusade for Christ. He said, oh yeah, I'm a Christian too. I said, what? That pretty much freaked me out. And I said, oh, well, you're a Christian, and this guy had no lifestyle like a Christian. And he said, yeah, some guy actually was from your group, Campus Crusade for Christ, gave me this little tract, and it said that if I prayed this prayer, I would be a Christian, I'd be forgiven. And so I go on with life. What you call a misconception. And so, yeah, people can call themselves Christians, but the thing of it is that we want to say that we are saved by grace and not by works. And it's not the works that will save us, but it's the works that will be an indicator of our faith. And I've known so many people who have made a genuine commitment to Christ, including myself, who made a genuine commitment to Christ. But for a while there, I was not living that life. Although I know that Jesus Christ was within me, his conscience was whacking me good and hard. And I finally got smart and said, you know what, I probably shouldn't be doing those things. And I repented. And that's when things began to change. The whole time I was a Christian, but I was not a disciple for a period of time there.
Okay. So what you're saying is that not all Christians, true Christians, are disciples, but they're the people that God has called to be disciples?
I would say that not all Christians are disciples, right? But that all disciples definitely are Christians, because they're not going to want those ever-deepening commitments to Christ unless the Spirit of God is living within them.
Right.
And that's what we want to do, is we want to help these Christians who sit in our pews of our churches or don't. This is a sad bunch of people. They don't experience the abundant life that Jesus Christ has for them because they're not staying connected. They are, Jesus said in John 15, I am the vine, you are the branches. He who abides in me and I in him, the same brings forth much fruit. For without me, you can do nothing. And if a man abide not in me, is cast forth as a branch and is withered, and men gather them and cast them into the fire, and they're burned. But if you abide in me and my words abide in you, you shall ask what you will, and it shall be done unto you. And so the whole thing there is that we, as branches, we need to stay connected to the vine, because that's going to produce that fruit that's there. We're continually jerking ourselves off of the branch and then putting ourselves back on and taking ourselves off, putting ourselves back on. That's going to be a fruitless life. And so many Christians live that way. We need to help them to understand that, Jesus said to abide, that means to remain constant in relationship with. And if they will produce the fruit of the Spirit, the fruit of life, and the abundance that Jesus Christ promised them. There are a lot of Christians need to hear the gospel, unfortunately. They're not hearing the whole gospel, which is, no, Jesus has plans for you, not just to get you out of hell, but to get heaven into you while you're here on earth.
All right, well, Chris, our time is up. Thank you guys all for being here. We got 8 minutes until the plenary session starts. I hope you guys are all able to make it to see Greg Steer. It's going to be good, I'm sure. Chris, you want to go ahead and close us out in prayer?
Yes, let's do that. Join me in prayer. Father, thanks for this day. Thank you for these men and women that were able to be on the call today. And Lord, I would just pray that your spirit would really motivate each one here to be intentional about the process of making disciples. Give them wisdom, discernment, and encouragement and enthusiasm to move that direction. Pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. I encourage you guys all to fill out the survey, the form there that have the link to in the chat. Be sure and copy out any of the other links from the chat before we close out. We'll keep this up until 3 o'clock in case any of you want to finish copying things out of there, or if you want to interact with Chris at all here before 3, we'll stay on. But you guys are free to go. Thanks everyone for coming.
Thanks for coming, everyone.
Thank
God
you,
bless you.
Chris. Appreciate it very much. Thanks a
Thank
lot.
you, Mike. Thanks for coming.
I've already ordered your book.
What's that?
I've already ordered your book.
Fantastic. Thanks, Janet.
You're welcome. I'm in the Bonhoeffer cohort.
Oh,
I just
excellent.
started. I'm in the one that Cindy Perkins is doing right now.
Oh, fantastic. Did you listen to Bill Hull
Yeah.
earlier today?
I did. I listened to both of them.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, he's a good man.
He's I really enjoy him too.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Anybody got any more questions they want to talk about?
Chris, you brought up the idea of the relationship of discipleship with life in general. I know you've been involved with some counseling in the past, and that was the whole subject of my master's degree while I was at the School of Theology there in San Bernardino. And it's the whole idea of the goal of discipleship and the goal of counseling basically got the same: move people towards maturity in Christ.
Yeah.
And counseling is a little slower process, but it's basically helping remove blocks to maturity in Christ. People may not like that approach that I would take in counseling, but that's where they're going to find the greatest help, is in a vital, dynamic, growing relationship with Christ.
Absolutely. And
So I appreciate your input. Your insights is really great. Thanks a lot.
oh yeah. Well, I'll tell you, Mike, one of the things I figured out a while back is what I call the principle of compelling focus. And that is that everybody has a compelling focus. You know, it might be positive, it might be negative, but it's the thing that occupies their windshield, you know, and is big. And if it's positive, it's, I want to be an NFL player. It's negative, it's, I want to get rid of PTSD, you know, something. And if we can't intersect their life in their area of compelling focus, they're not going to be interested in what we have to say. But if we can, they're going to be interested in everything we have to say. And that's the essence of counseling. They've come to a counselor because their compelling focus is, I don't know how to survive this world I'm in, you know? And so you can address that compelling focus, and that's when they're going to move.
Well, good to see you again. I'm going to check out and move on, but appreciate it very much. Thanks a lot.
All right, Mike. Good seeing you again.
Good to see you, David. Bye.
Bye, Dad. So Chris, I'll email you the link to where you can get the responses to the survey. We've had only 2 people who have responded so far, but others made
I'm
it.
about to, so don't.
Okay, no problem. I won't close it out.
Don't close.
Thanks, Janet.
No, I won't close it out, but yeah, I'll send that to you.
Okay, good.
Others may have saved the link and are planning to fill it out later too. So.
Excellent. Yeah, well, I appreciate you coming aboard, David, and this went a lot more smoothly with you there, I think, than it would have if I was trying to do it alone.
Not a problem. But you know what they say, teamwork makes the dream work.
That's it. And it rhymes.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Well, it's fun connecting with you too. Just the interesting connection between my dad and you and Rich Gardner, and how God kind of brought all those pieces together. And yeah, it's like being able to be part of God's kingdom and and serve the Lord and connect with others in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I see Kent Kaiser's picture there. And Kent, it seems like I know you from somewhere. Have we been around each other sometime in the past? I can't place where and when it was.
I'm not sure. I did write you a note.
Uh,
I did write you a note that I'm here with an old acquaintance of yours, Sue Pepper Reed.
oh yeah, how about that?
She's sitting over. We were streaming, so that's why I had my picture up there.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm here in Eugene too, so I'm not sure where we've run into each other.
Yeah. Well, it might not have. It just your face looked familiar, so I thought, yeah, I just thought I'd ask.
Could be my days in sports medicine and athletic training in town related
Yeah.
to you.
That could have been it. That could have been it. All right. So, yeah, fantastic. Well, I'm glad you could join us today, and Sue too.
Thank you. That's my story, yeah. So thank you very much for a really fine talk. We appreciate that.
You bet. My pleasure.
Unmute. So Chris, you're living in Eugene right now?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. How long have you been in Eugene?
Oh, a long time. We moved here in 1982. So
Okay.
that's going on 40 years now. So yeah, it's we originally moved here when I was director of the Athletes in Action track team, and we had a big staff down in Southern California, and we thought, why the heck are we all stuffed down here in Southern California? Let's spread out. So we moved our headquarters to Eugene, Trackdown USA, and we kept field offices open in Southern California and opened up in Phoenix and in Texas, and decided that'd be good. And so since our headquarters was here in Eugene, and when I eventually wound up leaving the track team and starting my own ministry, Disciple Makers International, I said, could I just stay here? And they said, yeah, why not? We got no other place for you to go. So we've been here ever since.
Okay. 1984 is when my folks and my family moved up from San Bernardino up to Hillsborough.
Oh yeah, yeah. Yep, we all became Oregonians about the same time.
Yep.
Yeah, that's great. I'm glad James Gleason came on board. He's a great guy. He's got such a passion for disciple making, and so much so.
Really, a lot of the people in the church there too, Sunrise Church, are really passionate about it, and so it's helpful to have a top leader, but it's really helpful to have a core of people that really are passionate about it. So it's not just one person, but it's really a church that's their heartbeat, and they're moving in that direction. But yeah, James is a great guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's rare to find nowadays.
Yeah, most
of it's just we got to keep our programs going. We got to keep our numbers up, and it's we got to stay entertaining. But there's so much more to it, and I think James and his staff have really committed themselves to it.
So when did you share at Sunrise Church?
It was 2 falls ago.
Okay.
Yeah, not last autumn, but the one before that. And they had a Saturday morning seminar that I was able to. I was Friday night, Saturday morning, and 4 hours. And geez, there must have been 100 people that came out for that from that church. That's so unusual that there would be such a huge bunch of people that would give up Friday night and half a day Saturday to learn about disciple making. But they did there, and
awesome.
It was pretty amazing. So
good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hi, Chris. It's Brad Harmon. What did you say the name of your ministry is?
It's called Reboot Recovery. Reboot Recovery. Yeah, it's based out of Nashville, Tennessee, but we've got group leaders all over the country. We've probably got 150 groups working right now all over the country, and some internationally as well. But that's the name of it.
And that's working mainly with the military?
Military and first responders.
Oh, great.
and their families. But we've just have released here in the month of December a general trauma course. So this is the same principles, but applied to those that are not veterans and first responders. And so they, it's the same format, 12 weeks, small groups. And right now, unfortunately, it's mostly Zoom meetings, but those are cranking up, and it's a lot of the same principles that veterans and first responders need to apply to deal with their trauma are the same principles that anybody need to apply. And there's so many people have experienced profound trauma in their lives, and they didn't go anywhere near a war zone or first responder employment. So that's what this one's for. So it's now general.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
I have a similar experience. I became a Christian through Crusade and then came up here to seminary in 1982 at Western 83 Western Seminary. So transferred.
Yeah. Yeah, I almost did that too. Yeah, right out of college, me and a buddy decided we were going to go to Western, and that would have been the summer of 1973, and or the fall of 73 we were going to start. But along the way, God sent me another direction, and my buddy went up there, and he went there, and he always looked down on me, saying, you know, you tricked me. You got me into the seminary, and you didn't show up. So,
What's his name?
Bob Decker. Yeah, he didn't stick with full-time ministry. He's now a real estate appraiser out of Denver, but godly man.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thanks for your seminar. It was great.
You bet, Fred. Thanks for coming. What do you think, David? Any more action?
It's muted there. It doesn't look like, I don't know, enter second Earl. I don't know if you guys have any other questions or comments. Did you guys get all the links? I take it that we're good. So I'll go ahead and end the.
I am kind of computer illiterate. How can I get more than one link or of these chats?
So yeah, if you just click and scroll, you can select the whole chat thing with all the links and all the
that'd
comments.
be great. Okay.
Get it all. Or if you need to, if you fill out the response form and say you wanted a copy of the chat, I can copy it and paste it in there and email it to you.
Okay. So if I want to click on the whole thing,
you should be able to highlight the whole thing and then right click on it and click copy. And then you can copy it, then paste it into like a Word document or a Google Docs document or something else, an email or anything, and paste it in there and save it there. And then you can have access to all the different links that were in there.
Okay. I'm trying to do the whole thing. Let me try it.
Let me tell you a trick, Fred.
Yes, thank you.
If you just put your cursor anywhere in the chat section and hit Control A at the same time, that will highlight everything in there, and then hit Control C, and that'll copy it all.
And then you go to something else and hit Control V to paste it.
Yeah, like a blank Word document or something like that.
Okay.
Does
So
that work?
let me try it. Control what again?
Control A. So as long as your cursor is anywhere in there, hit Control A.
Okay, then I got that now.
Now hit Control C, because that will copy everything.
Okay. And then I can take it to like a Word document and then control, what was it?
Control V.
V. Okay.
Yeah, V as in Victor, right next to the C key.
Okay. Yeah, I remember that now. Okay, thank you. That's very helpful.
Yeah, makes it easy.
All right. Thanks again, gentlemen.
You bet, Fred.
Glad you could join us, Fred.
Thanks.
All right. Well, I'll go ahead and end the meeting, and I'll shoot you the link to the responses to those who have responded to the survey.
Okay, yeah, that'd be great. And in fact, yeah, that'd be great. And then I'm going to, in fact, I should do that. I should do the whole chat thing myself now that I think about it. What I say, Control A.
Control A, Control C, and then
Okay.
Control V.
And then I'll be ready to put it in a Word document.
And I think, Chris, that because you and I were Kent is trying to get back in here. I think that because you and I were the hosts, the admin on it, I think that the chat automatically saves and then in a text file on our computer, and Zoom will open that up and show you right where that is when we end the meeting. Because we're both admins or hosts on the meeting, I think that it automatically saves it, but it doesn't hurt to go ahead and save it anyway. But I believe that that's when you are logged in as the host or the administrator, the account owner, then it does that usually. So
okay. Terrific. Good. Well, we'll be covered twice then.
Yeah. All right. Well, good seeing you, Kent, Chris, and we will, look forward to continuing to connect as time goes by. And I'm sure with the multiple points of connection that we've got, that there will be opportunity to continue to connect.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking forward to it.
Yeah. And once this whole COVID thing blows over, if and when it ever does, then maybe we can connect in person at some point.
Yeah, I'd like that. Come on to Portland, see you guys. That'd be great.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Mm-hmm.
All right, God bless. Thanks for doing the workshop. Appreciate it.
You betcha. We'll talk to you later.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.